Here he is, big fella back, Hayne Train. You know the drill. Crack a beer. Thirsty, actually. It's just after lunchtime, so always good to start now rather than earlier. How you been, mate?
Very well, mate. How have you been?
Been a little bit since we've had you on the potty. Obviously some big news that came out yesterday, so I thought that was probably a good segue in us to, doing another episode together. Huge news for first home buyers, obviously. They announced yesterday, 1 October, they've brought the date forward for the first home guarantee scheme changes, which essentially means, we're going to see property price caps changed. In particularly, if you're looking around the Gold Coast or Brisbane areas, it's going from 700 up to $1 million. And another critical one is then based upon, obviously, those income caps disappearing. I think at the moment for singles, it's 125,000 taxable income, 200 grand for, couples going in together. So, mate, some pretty huge news. What's your initial kind of thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously good that it was going to be brought in, expected to be brought in January, but I think bringing it in early is, it's been required for a little while, I think, because like up to 700 at the moment, it is quite hard. And we've seen like some of our first home buyer clients that purchase for under that, and they were buying units and townhouses out in the burbs and that kind of thing that have, it's gone up 150, some of them 200 grand in a year. So now trying to find something for under that 700 is extremely hard. So I think it's going to be really welcomed up to $1 million.
I actually find it's probably good timing. Like knowing what the government's like, not having too much of a knock on them, but like any time we're trying to implement something, whenever it comes to lending and then having the banks on side, I was thinking, geez, 1 Jan's going to be a really interesting one. Obviously, there's usually a lot of staff off and all that kind of thing, just skeleton staff that time of year.
Yeah.
So I was wondering, and even brokers and solicitors, a lot of them aren't around 1 Jan, so it would have been really interesting to see how they implemented that point in time, what it actually would have looked like. Maybe that would have been a bit more of a schmozzle, whereas, being that it's 1 October, it obviously allows them to, iron some stuff out as it comes through to Chrissy. I mean, it's already in place, but obviously there's some, some slight changes whenever it comes to the requirements. So
yeah, and I think even in like the last, is what we're about 5 weeks out now, sort of already seen in the last 24 hours now that clients are maybe pivoting from the original plans and that kind of thing. Like we've got clients that are out there that would fall under the new scheme that can get a much better deal that have been looking, and then clients that are now planning.
We're chatting about that.
They're now, ready to go. So I think it's going to be that couple of days before October. It's going to be a lot sent over to the banks, and then come 1 October, forms signed and over. Obviously, like there isn't spots, but I think it's going to create. I saw something they think it'll, only make prices go up 0.5% potentially, but
yeah,
I think you could see that increase even more because it's in spring anyway, and then there's just going to be even more competition now up to $1 million, which has already been pretty red hot.
Yeah, particularly on the Gold Coast. You talk around the real estate or the buyer's agents, like that is kind of the sweet spot at the moment, that $1 million. So I think probably what it is going to do, right, is it'll probably push those ones that are at $1 million and people that don't necessarily need that scheme or trying to use the government that way. It's going to probably knock some of those buyers out that want to try and utilise that. So maybe the stuff that was going to go for $1 million is now going to go for $1.05 million. The stuff that was going to go for 900, people are going to realise, okay, well we can get these guys close to $1 million. So I just think it's going to kind of naturally progress along that food chain of real estate where it's kind of like even the stuff at 700. Well, okay, there's no longer this 700 cap here. You might be seeing that going for 750, 760, maybe even north of that. So it's definitely going to have an impact for buyers out there for sure. Yeah. Based on even where the current market, we know how hot it's getting at the moment as well. So
especially in Brisbane and the Gold Coast, it's been pretty chaotic, and it hasn't just been like inner city Brisbane or close to the beach that's done really well in like the past sort of 12, 18 months. Like prices have continued to go up pretty sort of rapidly, and anyone that's probably been on the fence, like if they don't pull the trigger now, a lot of them may end up getting priced out where they're going to have to really adjust.
Yep. Do you actually, I know we were just talking about it off air before, do you just want to touch on those figures that you had for that one particular client that you had that's obviously close to buying at the moment, not using the scheme. Did you just want to run us through what that looked like?
Yeah, because I think we're having a look, and so it's going to be, 5% plus your costs. With all your legals and that kind of thing, you're probably going to be into it now for about 88 grand. So,
And that's at $1 million, right?
and that's up to that $1 million mark, which is still a lot of money, but we've got a couple of clients they're putting in 110 grand, but the current situation for them is they're going to be paying, some of them paying 15, one's paying well over 20 grand in mortgage insurance. Plus, that's obviously a great saving, but also, their rate's probably looking like it's going to be at least 0.5% higher because the people on the scheme get the rates as if it's 80%, like a really low risk because the government's backing it for the bank. So there's that ongoing saving for, could be 2, 3, 4 years, depending on how high the LVR is now, to try and get them onto a better rate. So they've got that saving. They're not paying the mortgage insurance.
That purchase price was $850 as well, wasn't it? It wasn't even $1 million for that one.
Yeah,
wasn't
there are
it?
people that are looking in like that 850 to 900 range. So if you're looking up to $1 million,
well, you think about that instant savings for them, right? So it's somewhere between 20 grand in mortgage insurance, higher interest rate, and then all of a sudden, this scheme is fast tracked through to 1 October. You're having a different discussion. I think you might have said there was also potentially some income. There might have been an income issue as well, potentially for them.
Yeah. So I think, for those people, already reaching out to them and having those chats of, if you do find something in the next 5 weeks that you can comfortably sort of go, no, we're happy to go this route. But as long as you know and you're making an informed decision. But I think a lot of people now are going to wait. May mean that they have to change lender, but they'll take advantage of that.
And I think that's the value in like having, not to bang on too much about mortgage brokers, obviously that's what we do, but I think that's the value in having someone that really understands the first home buyer market. We've kept ourselves pretty close to the ground with this sort of stuff. In terms of, what changes are happening, what's going to be implemented, what's the time frame of it, which is obviously then going to benefit our clients. Like, let's say someone, obviously there's a lot of media around this, so it'd be weird if someone did miss it, but if you're going through a broker that didn't necessarily deal with first home buyers a lot, maybe they would, say your clients that you're dealing with at the moment, they might go, okay, well, I'm going to go and buy that place for 850, 900, be without that cash. But, had they waited just a few more weeks, they could have been in a better position.
Well, both of them are with banks currently that aren't on the scheme. And one of them went direct first to sort of get some information around what they could do or whatnot. And I can tell you right now that if you went direct and that bank's not on the scheme,
they're not going to tell you
that lender's not going to say to you, hey, I think you should withdraw your application and you should go and maybe approach someone at Westpac or go see a broker. Like, as bad as it may sort of sound, if it's not available to them, like they're not going to inform you of it. So I guess like that's doing a lot in the first home buyer space. That's just, we're really across this stuff. So, and making our clients, having them make the informed decision as well. Like they're not getting steered anywhere. So, and I think that just makes them feel a lot more comfortable when they go through the whole process.
I guess that's probably the big thing with mortgage brokers, which maybe a lot of people don't know this, but we've got something to comply by called best interest duty, where we're operating in the best interest of the client. So irrespective of everything, doesn't matter what might be in the best interest of the broker. Oh, this is going to be a really easy, quick deal because that bank operates fast. No, that's not how it works. It's got to be, does it suit the client's needs? Are they getting the best interest rate? Does it give everything they want? Like we've kind of got to put all that together, which I think is important because that's then how we become trusted advisors to our clients. Yeah, I mean the news is huge. That's obviously a big change that's going to come in. I know that we did a little bit of prep before this. Have you got those numbers handy? I think we're just going to run through a couple of different price points for anyone that's watching or listening, just to give them some insight as to what the numbers look like at certain purchase prices, whether it's in Queensland or New South Wales. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so New South Wales, different stamp duty exemption there. So purchasing up to 800, they're probably going to be about 43K all in. So, covering off your legals and building your pest. Come 1 October, in Queensland, the 800K mark will see you put in about 68,000. For a property up to 900, you're looking at 78, and then up to $1 million, putting in 88. Whereas traditionally, yeah, you would have been paying maybe 25 grand in mortgage insurance. Your rate's going to be higher.
Yep.
And to borrow again at that top LVR, you were probably putting in, a bit over 121, 122.
Yep.
So massive saving on, even if you do have the cash there, that's cash now that they can keep on hand, put in an offset account, use it for some minor renovations or just keep there as a bit of a buffer. Yeah, they're not paying 25 grand
Yep.
for an insurance policy that covers the bank, and your rate's going to be a bit lower. So like that, when someone may have to sort of stay there for 4 or 5 years while they pay down their loan and the home price increases before they can sometimes move, like the end sort of net amount of what they're going to save is
Massive.
It's going to be astronomical. Yeah.
Could you just run those numbers at 800 again, New South Wales and Queensland? Because I just want to touch on something here.
Yeah, so New South Wales, about 43,000
Yep.
As their contribution, and Queensland will be 68. Yeah, largely just due, I guess, to
Stamp
duty exemption going up to
800 in New South Wales.
Yeah,
Yep.
and it does taper off from 700 to just under 800 in Queensland, but by the time you get to the top, you're paying full freight. So.
And so that's been a bit of a shift. So for anyone here that's living on the GC, hopefully there's a few of yous. Between that, what we've kind of seen in the past, particularly with the scheme and the stamp duty concession, is people are actually leaning more towards purchasing than the likes of Tweed. And the reason for that is you were able to go up to 750,000 in New South Wales, or what they call as like other regional New South Wales. And so what that meant is essentially you'd spend another 50 grand than you could in Queensland because we could only go to 700,000. And essentially you get a bit more bang for your buck because the deposit was actually less in New South Wales than it was Queensland, even spending that extra 50 grand. So once again, there's a bit of a change there. Obviously at 800 in New South Wales, there's still, and what I mean by that is kind of around that Tweed or northern New South Wales area. Yeah. There's a pretty decent shift there where 800 is still really good buying down there because what do you say, only 43 or 44, 43, 44. And so the benefit now in Queensland is you've kind of got these higher price caps that you can go to up to $1 million, but there's stamp duty that's going to be applicable still above 700. So obviously we've only had that change, what was that, 6 months ago, I think, the stamp duty concession change for first home buyers in Queensland. What's your thoughts on it now? Do you think there needs to be a bit of a shift?
Oh, yeah, we've probably been saying for a while that it needs to change and maybe increase a little bit. All the way up to $1 million, not sure. Do they do something for first home buyers that, do they get a stamp duty exemption on, if they do buy something up to $1 million or something like that.
Like having a sliding scale potentially from like, maybe it's not 700-800, maybe they've got a bit more scope to get some sort of a discount.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, it's already a popular price point in Queensland between that sort of 800 and $1 million.
It was interesting,
but
when we were looking at the scheme, I think you were saying before that Melbourne is actually less than what it is in Brisbane.
Yeah, it looks like the price in Melbourne's going up to $950. So
wow,
that's something we're going to hopefully don't quote us if it's wrong, but that because obviously the house, I know like there's a lot more dwellings in Victoria and that kind of thing, but with like the average price now creeping up in Brisbane and the Gold Coast,
it's massive.
Migration numbers are still there, so it's not, obviously expect that that's going to continue on. There's obviously a massive amount of infrastructure programs.
It's a big nod, isn't it, to
Brisbane and that kind of thing as well. A lot of people moving to the Gold Coast and Sunshine Coast and things like that. So as I said, a lot more people coming up from down south. So
it's a pretty big nod. Like the federal government has essentially said, like, you know what, these people in Queensland need, or Brisbane, surrounding suburbs, down the coast, up the coast, pretty much have come out and said, like, they need a higher property price threshold than Melbourne, which, I mean, if we were talking about this 5 years ago, you'd be like, bullshit, that's never going to happen. Yeah. So it's a pretty big change, really, isn't it?
I think they probably just expect those migration numbers to
continue.
Bit of a no-brainer compared to living down there. But
what's going to be really interesting for anyone that's listening, that's looking to, obviously those numbers that you just flipped off before, they were more based around buying an established property.
Yeah.
What's going to be really interesting, and some of the feedback that we've been getting from clients is, what's based upon is like, even a build at the moment, to go and find a block of land plus do a build under 700 is extremely difficult.
Yeah.
So it'll be really interesting now that it's up to $1 million, what that's going to look like. And I guess the two main factors there are, in Queensland, the state government came out and pretty much abolished stamp duty altogether for any sort of new build. So you've obviously got to buy the land. I think you've got to build within, or start to build within 2 years. And then also the other one is they've still got the 30 grand first homeowners grant available. So, you talk about those numbers before, you all of a sudden, let's say you went up to $1 million. Once you cut out stamp duty and you've got your 30K, really to get to $1 million of a house and land, you're only looking at 25, maybe 30 grand that you're chucking in cash in comparison, which is fucking insane to go and buy a property for $1 million.
Yeah.
And you've only got to chuck in 25, 30. That's nuts.
And the areas that they're obviously trying to get people to, like the stamp duty exemption is great on the land because it can be, it's obviously a large amount as well, but finding that block of land, like speaking to a client this morning, they can find the land, that's fine, but then trying to squeeze a build onto it, it's nearly impossible to get the first homeowners grant. So, I mean, personally, I think like that should be raised maybe up to like 850 or something like that. It's got to be
the first homeowners grant, of course, is still 750, of course.
So,
my bad.
I mean, there's got to be I think there's got to be some give there as well if they're really trying to push people to go live out in those other areas and build, because
it's a good point, actually.
Land, it's continuously gone up and up and up, and you see that even through like the stages of sales with like developments and that kind of thing. But building prices are at an absolute all-time high. Like they said that it was the highest like a few years ago, and it's continued to go up and up and up. So like if someone's now paying 500 for a block of land, which it's still only going to be a small block of land out somewhere, you can't put a house on it for 250.
Yeah.
So
true, actually.
People to go, maybe do I just go on the other scheme, spend a little bit more, but they can actually get something straight away. So that will they look at it? Don't know. Should they? Probably.
Doesn't align anymore, actually. Like the more I think about that, I didn't think about that when I was saying that before. Sorry, everyone that's probably gone out and tried to do $1 million build now and only put in 25, 30. My bad.
Because it's been at 750 now.
It's been
for a very basically. I don't know if not forever because it's been around.
No, it has been. I can't remember. It obviously would have changed.
A long time, and everything else has gone up, and just with all the, the push on, need to build, need to go out these areas, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
If you're not going to make it, remotely possible for people, then they're not going to do it.
Well, they've obviously uncapped the stamp duty on new. So it would only make logical sense that they do make changes then to the grant. Or no one's, like when you really think about it, no one's actually going to be able to use. I mean, don't get me wrong, 750, you depending on where you build.
You have to go way out.
The other thing, for anyone that's listening, you can go onto the website for the National Housing Affordability, which you can actually pop in all the postcodes. So obviously we're quoting very broadly, Brisbane, the likes of Tweed, Gold Coast, but there's actually different property price caps depending on where the properties are located. So if anyone's interested, you simply can go on there, jump on the tool, punch the postcode in, and it'll actually tell you, what is the property price cap for that particular suburb, because that's an important one, because people might be listening going, they might be up in somewhere like Hervey Bay or something like that and go, oh, cool, I can go to $1 million. It's not necessarily a blanket for everyone in the state. There's usually kind of two set ones. There's like capital cities and kind of surrounding suburbs.
Yeah.
And then they've got the more regional one. So, it's a great tool, gives you really good insight. But my point is, this is why it's important to get a broker that can talk you through everything, right? Understand the grants, the schemes, what you can get as a first home buyer. In your advice, anyone that, wants to take advantage of this, and I guess the good thing is there's no set spots, but one thing that people will probably have to keep an eye on is the market, because,
there's no spots, but it's going to create more competition.
Exactly.
Sure. Whereas
when's a good time then to be
Well, I
seeing
mean,
someone like you?
Like you've got 5 weeks now until it comes out. So, you know,
Maybe 4 when the podcast drops.
yeah, possibly. By the time, reach out, get all your information back, it's quick and easy to complete. Get all your figures and options to you.
Yep.
And then you've got a little bit of time on, making the decision on what you're going to do and that kind of thing. Because I really do think that it's going to be October 1's going to happen.
Yep.
And then I think it's going to be a bit of a sort of stampede. You're going to see agents that work in that maybe 800 to $1 million range. I think they're probably going to start seeing more people through the open homes.
They'll cotton onto it, of course. Like they understand that there's
absolutely, yeah, they understand
there's price
that,
caps.
Your cash is going to go a little bit further now as well. So, it's always good to try and get the best deal you can. But, being your first home, and if you can get your foot in the market and just secure something at a decent price that's going to suit you for maybe 2 or 3 years until you move or something like that, then I think those that act quickly are going to be the ones that sort of benefit the most. And if you sort of hold off until maybe December, you could find that you're having to readjust what your ideal purchase scenario looks like.
And so probably the importance, like we're talking about hot markets, we're talking about spring selling season, which is traditionally the busiest period of the year. You're talking to agents at the moment that are saying, you know what, it wasn't as busy at that start of the year. It was still good, but because of cyclone and weather and all that kind of stuff, they envisaged that this was just going to get, spring was going to be extra crazy this year because those properties kind of got held over. What would be your advice to someone that is like keen to get in the market? What's your kind of thoughts on it in terms of making sure they're absolutely ready, particularly with their offers?
Yeah, I think you need to make sure you know where you stand, first of all, and then go through and have a look at what your options are. Because, if you are tossing up, where do you buy, or do I build, do I go with this? Have a look. Go through with your broker on, this is A versus B, this is what it all looks like. And then once you're committed and you've got your plan, make sure you've got your pre-approval in place, especially in areas that are like in those high price brackets, like, your Gold Coast, Brisbane and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Your 14-day finance clause isn't going to cut it, especially as you head into like those busier periods. So making sure your contract conditions are the absolute best.
And what are we seeing at the moment? It's kind of like we're kind of quoting somewhere between 2 and 7 days, you'd say. Usually probably towards, something like a 5 in between there, but...
Yeah, absolutely. I think, probably just depending on the lender and where they're looking, but there's nothing over 7.
No.
Because all the clients that we go through it all with, like they're all prepared and ready to go. Like they've got their pre-approvals in place. They, we go through, these are some things you should speak to the agent about. Communicating with agents is massive, especially when you're looking in, say, 800 to $1 million. If you're looking in 2 or 3 suburbs, you're going to see the same 3 or 4 agents more often than not. So just making them aware that, you're pretty active in the market and that kind of thing. And then, because if they're confident that you're going to buy and you've got good contract conditions and things like that, they're going to go straight to the seller. And I'd probably say they're going to sell your offer the best.
Yep.
Yep.
That's probably a good point. That's probably a recommendation to anyone listening or watching at the moment is, particularly in this, I reckon these next few months are going to be pretty crazy. In order to keep up with the market, probably what I would recommend, all agents now are pretty prevalent on social media. I would say to anyone that wants to keep an eye on the market and what it's truly doing, because realestate.com can be a bit slow. I mean, for us, we provide IP data reports for all our clients, so they've got an insight as to what the property's worth. But even that data's slow. So the one thing I probably would recommend anyone that's listening that's serious about buying, to understanding where the market is, make sure you're following those. Let's say it's 3 agents. Make sure you're following them on things like social media. Because you'll get insight as to what's actually happening on the ground, sales that are happening on the ground before it necessarily actually hits those data points to give you that real value. And that's really how you're going to understand where the market is and what potentially that property's worth that you're looking to buy. So I reckon that's a big one. What else, mate? Anything else for us?
I think that's probably the
the main crux. I know there's a bit of
part at the moment. I think for first home buyers, I think especially like when a lot of them have been planning now for a little while.
Could be worthwhile waiting potentially.
Yeah, and there's a lot more people now realising, I think, that despite what may get said on the news from time to time about this is going to collapse and that kind of thing, property prices, you can probably hang your hat on, aren't going down, especially in like those key areas where a lot of younger people are moving and renting first, experiencing the lifestyle. So now like they're sort of finding a way to get into the market any way they can. Sort of probably over recent years, maybe they've been like a little bit more picky and that kind of thing. Whereas now I think a lot is sort of going, I just need to get in.
Yeah.
And then, I can be a bit more picky in 2-3 years' time when maybe they are upgrading the home and that kind of thing. So it's going to be competitive. It'll be a busy period for sure. But just prepare yourself best you can, I guess.
And so we did some bit of research, obviously, before we came on, as everyone can probably tell by the numbers we've been talking about, but we did have a chat to the government beforehand, and we asked them about specifically what is the scheme going to look like whenever it comes to when they actually get the spot, when can they sign a contract, because sometimes, with other things that are in play, like the first homeowners grant, that sometimes has had set date cutoffs. I think the main feedback that we got there, it doesn't really matter when the contract is signed. So if for whatever reason you do end up signing something and it's the end of September, providing you give yourself enough time for finance, you actually still could qualify under these new price caps, because it's all got to do with like when you lodge to get approved, and then when they actually go to send your scheme spot off to that set lender. So I think for us, the conversations with our clients at the moment is probably, we don't necessarily have to wait to 1 October, although we're probably waiting for a little feedback from the banks, but potentially we could be lodging those applications just before the end of October, or just before the start of October. Probably not too much because of the turnaround times are so quick at the moment. But, we could be lodging them pending the paperwork, actually.
Yeah.
That's probably the big thing.
So that's something we'll definitely
keep an eye on and
keep our sort of first home buyers up to date on and that kind of thing. But, if someone's already out there and sort of going through the process, just make sure that, you chat to your broker about what that's going to look like. Make sure they're across everything. Make sure that, you're not going to sign a contract a day or two earlier and it ends up costing you a fortune or something.
Absolutely.
Like that.
You wouldn't want to be signing 10 days out from that date, and then all of a sudden you've got a 14-day finance or something, and you leave yourself a couple of days to try and get a new scheme spot. That would probably be a little bit reckless.
May not sort of release anything until like much closer to the date and that kind of thing. They're pretty.
Yeah, we traditionally do see some new forms too, don't we? Which will have a little bit of a change.
Forms and that kind of thing for the scheme spots.
Awesome. All right, mate. I think we pretty much covered off on everything. So I guess main finishing points would be, if you're interested in understanding what your borrowing capacity is, and that's probably another big thing, is like the actual borrowing capacity side of it, just because these property price caps have, not skyrocketed, but it's gone from 700 to $1 million. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to borrow that money. So that's the importance in start to do some work now to actually see where you sit, because you might look at the numbers and go, $1 million gets me close to the property that I want to get into, but your borrowing capacity might be closer to 700 still. So maybe it's a better point right now to try and get in that market before, we see these property prices increase. So go and have a chat to your broker, suss out what your numbers look like, get a plan in place that whether it's now or whether it's just after, October hits, you get an application in, ready to be pre-approved, have the best conditions you can to go and buy a property. Legend. Thanks, Hano. Appreciate your time, mate. And see everyone next time.